I want to talk about one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. I don't own a TV, nor do I own something that can actually play a DVD. Even my laptop does not have a DVD player. That being said, I do own a few DVDs. The DVDs I own are Crimson Peak, Shape of Water, The Avengers, and the worst movie I have ever seen in my life. Now, my favorite movie of all time is Pan's Labyrinth, which explains 2 out of the 4 DVDs I have. I have the Avengers DVD because it was actually an inside joke with one of my friends from middle school. But for this movie, the only reason I got this movie is because of the executive producer, and that is Guillermo del Toro. So I only got this movie because the executive producer was Guillermo del Toro. And I've mentioned before that I am not a horror fan. Even though this movie is rated R, it's more of like a sci-fi thriller, so I figured it would be okay. I was wrong. This movie is just like generally all around disgusting. The little blurb on the front reads, "A potent and provocative thriller, sexy and scary in equal doses." Which should have been a clue in that this movie was gonna be fucking disgusting. This movie did kind of start out being kind of sci-fi-ish, and then all of a sudden takes a turn into being like some weird monster fucker shit. Okay, so what happens in this movie? Basically, there are these 2 scientists that are married, and they're trying to basically like create life. They're basically trying to splice together as much DNA as they can to make like a brand new organism. Hence the name of the movie. So they're trying to get it to work, and it's not working, and it's not working, and then all of a sudden it magically does work, and now they have this like tiny little baby looking creature that's actually very disgusting. The wife of the duo, who is named Elsa, takes immediately to this creature and immediately starts like mothering it and loving it, being like, "This is my child, this is my baby." Meanwhile, Clive, her husband, is like, "No, this is a science experiment," which at the beginning of this movie I was like, "Yes, Clive, this is simply a science experiment," and she is being really weird about this. And she's like real weird about it. She continually acts like this is her legitimate baby and that this is a human child, which it's not. And as far as we know at this point, it didn't have any human DNA in it, which was really bizarre because it just looks like a human with a very scary tail. Anyways, they name her Drin because she couldn't read the word nerd properly. Drin ages very fast. After a few days, she's like a full-grown person. And at this point where Drin is pretty much full-grown is where this movie starts getting really, really gross. Because the married couple, I guess, are like so in love they can't keep it in their pants, they end up having sex in front of Drin. Drin, I think, at this point is still considered a child, which there's so much going on at this point. If we're treating the science experiment as a child, that's a pretty fucked up thing to do. If the science experiment has the same understanding as a person, then treating it as a science experiment is a pretty fucked up thing to do. At this point, both the way Clive and Elsa are treating Drin is like really weird. Also, it's very clear at this point that Drin is starting to have feelings for Clive, which, like I said, it gets real gross. So while they're trying to figure out what to do with Drin, because they're obviously hiding it from everyone else in the science lab because it's a movie, they're also running an experiment with these 2 like blob monsters. That was kind of like the first iteration of the experiment. Drin would be this like the second iteration. People are like really starting to notice that the married couple that's kind of like in charge of this experiment is like really absent and like really not focusing on it whatsoever. Because of this, mistakes are happening with their older experiment, and they go to like a show to show off how they created life out of nothing basically, and how they have a male and female of this blob species that they made. Because Clive and Elsa have not been paying attention at all to their old experiment and they've been solely focusing on Drin, they missed something very important that Clive's brother, who also works in the experiment, mentioned in passing to Clive, which is that their female specimen of the blob monsters was starting to show male hormones. Basically, it done transed itself and was now a male. Which, the thing about the twists in this movie is they're not that surprising. Because one of the twists is when they go like present their scientific findings of the blob monsters to a bunch of scientific people, the female blob monster is no longer female, it is now a male, and they fight and kill each other. Very gross, very gory, but also not a twist. It's played out like it was supposed to be surprising, but the brother flat out told Clive that like, hey, it done transed. I'm pretty sure the point is supposed to be that Clive is so now infatuated with Drin that he doesn't even care about anything else in his life, including his wife Elsa. Warning, we're still gonna get grosser. So because Drin is now like a full-grown, pretty much human just with a scary tail and naked, they end up driving her out to a barn for like safekeeping, I guess. Elsa is very clearly dealing with her own mommy issues. I can't remember exactly, but I think it's around this point in the movie that we also learn that Elsa put her own DNA into Drin, and that's why she loved it like a daughter for so long. However, we also see that Drin is becoming very, very violent and very, very smart. Drin is starting to get good at manipulating people, especially Clive, who now has the hots for Drin, which is fucking disgusting. At this point in the movie, I was like ready to turn it off, honestly, but there was only like 30 minutes left. Out of almost nowhere, Elsa starts like really hating Drin. Drin like eats a cat or whatever, but it still doesn't really make any sense. I think it's supposed to be Elsa is like really jealous of Drin and Clive's relationship, which is, again, gross. Drin and Clive like dance or something, and then they almost kiss, and then Elsa finds them, and it's like fucking gross. So like out of nowhere, Elsa is all of a sudden like cold-hearted. Drin has this like scorpion tail, so she just like amputates the scorpion tail and like really wants to like cut Drin open alive and like dissect her alive. It's like completely out of nowhere. Elsa is suddenly like a crazy bitch. Clive, who at this point has fallen in love with something that was a child a few days ago, also is not fully human. Anyways, Clive now won't let Elsa hurt Drin, treats Drin like a baby, has sex with it. And then Drin ends up regrowing her like spiky tail and ends up, well, she was evil after all, which I could have told you. Again, the twists in this movie are not very like interesting. We've already talked about how Drin is like the second iteration of the blob monsters, so you can automatically understand what's gonna happen next, right? So Drin breaks out of the barn and grows a pair of wings and starts flying away. The two married scientists then have to go track her down and find her. Elsa really wants to kill her. Clive is still not 100% on board, even though Drin just tried to kill him. I think there's like a bad group of scientists too that's like also trying to track Drin down to kill her. Anyway, so they're just like out in the woods running around trying to find Drin. Drin now has wings, so Drin comes out of the sky, grabs Clive, and just like basically kills him. Just like rips him to pieces. Because the big twist that we all could have seen coming, Drin had done trans and is now a male. He now sees Clive as competition for Elsa, kills Clive. This is the grossest part of the movie, so skip forward if you don't want to hear this bullshit. After Drin kills Clive, Elsa also gets like very injured and cannot move. Drin mates with her unconsensually. The ending of this movie is a rape scene. Well, I guess not the ending of the movie. There's like, I can't remember if it was like an end credit scene or just like almost an epilogue. Elsa is alive but pregnant with the Drin's kid, which is also slightly incestuous because Drin used her DNA, and basically a science company pays her off to not abort the baby but to keep it, and so they can study on it, and she might die giving birth to the thing, but she takes the money anyway. This movie's fucking disgusting. This movie is awful. The plot is simultaneously like super disjointed, and also like you can see every single big twist coming. Any foreshadowing that happens is basically just telling you the twist like a few scenes before it happens. And also it's just like so gross. I don't suggest anybody ever go and watch this movie. I honestly wish every copy of it ever gets burned and we never have to see it again. I hope to never see another work by this director, and I was legitimately like feeling like I was gonna throw up by the end of this movie. It was not a good time. I don't understand what would possess somebody to write a story like this, because it goes like a few steps beyond just like general monster fucking, which is already not my cup of tea, but then you add in like a rape scene, very brutal by the way, random like incestuousness, and also this creature is like only a week or two old tops and has been a child for the majority of the time the love interest has known them. The only way I can really describe it is gross. Everything that happens in this movie is just gross. I am not at all joking or exaggerating when I say this is the worst movie I have ever seen. Every time I think about it, I get I feel sick. I cannot believe I spent $8 on this movie. I will never watch another one of your movies. Are you kidding me? The thing about this movie is like, it wasn't even produced well. The acting was like subpar at best. The sci-fi part of it was just a background to create a monster that then Clive could monster fuck. Most of this movie is just like nonsense and weird flirting between like a sci-fi creature that is still a child and a grown-ass man who is married. There's nothing like interesting about cinematography or lighting or costuming or anything. Even the animation is weird sometimes, but this is also kind of an old movie, so that's kind of just old movies. I was watching this with my ex, and we had like gotten dinner ready, and we were like getting things like all set together on the table, and he had accidentally clicked the like fast forward, like that skip forward a few seconds a few times, and we were like 10 to 15 minutes further into the movie than we had been, and we didn't even notice at first, because that's how disjointed this movie feels. The characters themselves just like don't make sense. Clive goes from like Dren is strictly an experiment to let me fuck it. Elsa goes from this is my daughter to let me kill it. The evil group of scientists go from this is a horrible thing that needs to be dead to I will take your baby for a lot of money. I don't care if you die in the process. All around, I give this movie a D-. A D for disgusting, and a minus because I wish I could subtract all the memories of this movie from my brain. That's all I have to say about this movie because I never want to think about it ever again. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.